Welcome everyone to another episode of the SBA show. Today I'd like to welcome Will Bryan from Respirabuilt. For those joining us for the first time, my name's Hamish White. I'm one of the founding directors of Sustainable Building Alliance and director of Sanctum Homes, and I'm going to be your host for today. In the spirit of reconciliation, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. As I mentioned, today we're joined by Will. Will is a carpenter and has been for a number of years, but became disillusioned of the standard of construction in Australia, particularly around the quality of houses being produced and the materials being used. His concerns extended to the human health issues associated with living in standard built houses. This promoted Will to question his role in the industry and consider pivoting towards a construction methodology that addresses these concerns. This journey led Will to the UK, where he had an opportunity to work under Graham Durant of Hemp Lime Spray, a leader in the hempcrete industry. Graham has built hemp houses and provided technical advice to hundreds of clients for over a decade. Armed with everything he learned, Will returned to Australia to kickstart Hempcrete Victoria, which has gone from strength to strength and now to establishing Respirabuilt. Respirabuilt offers a sustainable, efficient and carbon negative hempcrete block system designed to appeal to a wider audience beyond the costly, natural, high-performing construction sector. Respirabuilt commitment extends beyond sustainability to ensuring dignified, affordable and healthy living spaces. Respirabuilt's approach marks a significant shift towards making carbon neutral, high performance construction solutions practical reality for everyone. Will, tell us about this magical product.
All right, thanks for having me, Hamish. I really appreciate it.
No dramas,
and the opportunity to talk about Hempcrete, my life passion, the thing that I dream about at night and all day. So basically, I worked as a carpenter for a number of years, was very disillusioned with it, fell in love with an Italian girl at the right time, and went over to Italy for a number of years. I essentially started searching over there because I didn't really want to work as a carpenter in Italy. I'm not good at chiseling marble, and I'm not good at making large stone structures. So I thought I'll spend my time to try to learn how to champion a natural building material, because I wanted to go back there to Australia with a nice new skill. I looked at a lot of other natural building materials and methods, and looked at straw bale, looked at cob, looked at rammed earth, looked at all sorts of different natural building methods. A lot of them I found were not applicable to a conventional building environment, essentially. So straw bale's been around for a long time, rammed earth's been around for a bit, cob's been around for a very long time. None of them have really hit the mainstream. And that's because a lot of detailing, there's a lot of differences with the building of those structures, and there's a high labour cost. I found with hempcrete that it's relatively new compared to the other natural building methods. The French invented it, or kind of amalgamated a different type of building method into hempcreting in the 80s. And it's gone from strength to strength during that time. There's thousands of hempcrete houses in the UK, there's thousands in France, there's lots of hempcrete houses in lots of cold climates in Northern Europe, where it's become popular. And now it's starting to become quite popular in hot climates as well, because it really performs well in those environments. It gives you really good shielding from the cold as well as the heat, because of the nature of the material. So I had a really good opportunity to learn off, as I said, Graham Durant, and he's an amazing guy, really, kind of like the maestro of hempcrete over in the UK. Works very closely with Will Stanix, the guy who wrote the Hempcrete book. So it was a really good opportunity. Felt like it was the Hogwarts of hempcreting in a sense. So came back armed with lots of knowledge, and started Hempcrete Victoria here in Victoria, of all places. And straight away, when I started the business in 2021, There was 3 other people, I think, in Victoria doing hempcreting, and lots of people interested, a hell of a lot of people interested. As soon as I built the website, started getting people getting in contact every week. There's one issue with, even though I say hempcrete's applicable to a standard building environment, it's really expensive. It's a premium product. And that's to do with the fact that you need specialized labor, you need to take a big mixer on site, mix the hempcrete on site, you need to make formwork, you need to make sure the formwork's really straight. You need to make sure it's getting poured into the walls really nicely so that the layers are really beautiful. And there's a bit of detailing, there's a secret science to it. But there's room for improvement with it. And a lot of people I spoke with, over the last, what year is it, 2024? Over the last 3 years, only probably 10 to 15% of the people I speak to can actually entertain the idea of building a hempcrete structure due to the cost. And that really, I really wanted to change that because of the 3 reasons why hempcrete's an amazing material. There's the ecological benefits, there's the thermal abilities that it gives a house, but the one that's really important for me is the human health aspect of it, to do with the moisture regulation. So, I don't have to tell you, Hamish, the issues with moisture in houses. Moisture is the #1 cause of building failure. There's a massive issue across all of the world called sick building syndrome, where people live. That phrase, sick building syndrome, doesn't refer to the house; it refers to the people inside of the house. We're naturally evolved to live in a moisture content of around 50 to probably 80 at the max relative humidity. If it's out of those ranges, then you start to get skin issues. If it's really low, if it's too high, you start to get respiratory issues, and there's mold in the environment. And there's all sorts of different human health issues that are linked to living in a high moisture environment, which has been a big issue since concrete became really popular and people living in apartments and trapped in high moisture environments. And we kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater when we started building with a lot of modern materials without putting a lot of thought into it. So hempcrete is really just a return to the norm in a sense, with a new material, in the sense of hemp instead of straw, or hemp instead of timber. So that really affects me because a lot of people call me and they like, my daughter has asthma, my daughter has, we've got lung issues, and then I say, oh well, it's $500 a square meter for hempcrete. That really doesn't make me feel good. So that's when Respirabuilt was born. I thought, how do I provide a material? Not me, I've got a business partner, Emma, as well. How do we provide, beautiful natural homes that regulate the moisture, that are carbon negative, that reduce your energy bills, depending on what size block you get to next to zero in terms of the heating and cooling. But it was the human health element that was the really important bit for me. So, in keeping with the Italian tradition of me going to Italy and my Italian business partner, we called the business Respirabuilt, which is an Italian word for breath. Respirare is to breathe. And we've started importing hempcrete blocks from Italy with aim to produce them locally in the next year and a half or so with the help of this company, Sanini. So it's working really well. We are doing Hempcrete Victoria and Respira are kind of working in tandem to do a little bit of cast, a little bit of block. Sometimes we do a little bit of both so that you get the best of both worlds. So you could have, there's a sliding scale of, you can have a full custom house with Hempcrete Victoria, or you can just use Hempcrete blocks, Respira blocks, which are around 20% of the 20 to 25% of the cost. The other benefits of the blocks is you don't need specialized labor. We can you can order some blocks, and then we can have a few conversations over the phone with your builder or your bricklayer, and set you up ready to go, so you don't have to pay for us to come and get an Airbnb near where you live. The other benefit of it is you do not have to wait for it to set. You can render the Respira blocks pretty quickly, probably after about a week and a half, once the mortar settles down. Give the wall a chance to settle. It's a hell of a lot quicker install time. On our first Respirabuilt job, it was on Bruny Island down in Tassie, and there's not too much labour. And I managed to find a bricklayer who's 70 years old, who I pulled him out of retirement to do our first wall. And he goes, "Why didn't you tell me about these 20 years ago?" Because you can literally, they weigh 2 kilos each. You can do quite an amazing amount with the blocks really quickly. And I was working as this laborer essentially, and because the bricks are so light, I could carry almost 2 square meters of blocks to each zone that he's working at. So they're a similar dimension to like block work, to cinder blocks, but a hell of a lot lighter.
And
I
I
can
know,
go on and on.
I just want to
Yeah,
interrupt for a sec because I know
yeah,
you've got one there. I know you've got one. Can you just show well,
yeah.
if there are people watching this, what they actually look like? So the dimensions are, what does that look about 400 or 500 by 100
Yeah,
ish?
it's 500 mil wide by 200 mil high, and this is the 80 mil block. So quite thin. This one. That's the most affordable one, and then we've got a 120 mil block, and then we can get like quite thick ones as well. But the reason we
Yep.
use these thick blocks is because these thin blocks, sorry, is because there's not really the tradition with hempcrete blocks where they're used a lot over in Europe. It's a different type of construction. You're using post and beam style construction where you do a few concrete posts, then you'll have a bearer. Then you can just fit in thick blocks. But here in Australia, we're using timber frame construction. And one of the issues with Hempcrete Victoria is people are halfway through, designing or something like that. With these, you can literally just, use that instead of bricks. You can skin it to the brick wall. You could rip off the plasterboard, skin the inside. You can do both sides. It's really versatile, and the whole idea is it suits the Australian build style, so it's really easy and accessible.
So, I mean, I look, and I'll just be the devil's advocate here, like, because I have built a hempcrete house before, and I know kind of the loose values of a 300 wide wall are sitting at about R4. I do know that they do perform better than an R4, but that's sort of what we're using when we're punching it into PHPP in our NatHERS assessment. So with your hempcrete blocks, I'm assuming that you've got your hempcrete block on the outside, which provides a beautiful thermal bridge skin on the
Yeah.
outside of the building. Are you then having a gap in between the block and the frame, or is it straight hard to the frame?
You want to have a bit of a gap for a multitude of reasons. Also, maybe the frame's not completely straight or plumb, so you'll start about 10 millimeters out. And also, if you've got bat insulation within the frame, you'll want to have a membrane, a weather membrane, just to kind of close down that surface against the pine frame. So yeah, you want to
So
have
you're
about 10
going,
mil
so
gap
so
there.
so you're going
Yeah,
block frame with a membrane and then insulation.
yeah, yeah. And then you
Yeah.
could all, and then you could go blocks on the inside as well. Essentially, if you want to have quite a if you want to have a very high performance kind of build. Yeah,
So, I mean, obviously, we're externally, I'm assuming you're rendering it with a line render. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why sometimes we're opting to just have hempcrete blocks on the inside because lime render can be quite expensive as well. That
Yeah.
was being a big determining factor for a lot of people with the cast job where you have to do a lime render.
So how are you finishing the inside of the
Yeah,
building?
so we've got a job in Kew where it's a secondary dwelling coming up, and they're just going to go. So the layer system will be weatherboard, breather gap, uh, membrane, insulation, and then hempcrete blocks on the inside. So it suits their area. They're in Kew, so they kind of conform to the vernacular of the
The
area.
design,
But on the
the design aesthetic to the area. Yep. Yep.
yeah, and then we're just putting a vapor permeable clear coat on the inside. So they quite like the aesthetic of the hempcrete blocks. And there's essentially we've been talking about things being vapor open and the moisture management. Um, so you can kind of close down that surface if you've got a hemp block wall on the inside, but you won't get that chalkiness as you're putting a few layers of this clear coat on there. And also just doing, good work with the mortaring so it's nice and neat.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I probably know enough about hempcrete to probably to be a little bit dangerous in the question that I'm kind of firing at you. So I guess, like in my mind, you could probably use it in a number of different ways. If you really wanted to apply that lime render externally, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can actually have that as our WRB and final finish on the outside. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
then we can
Yeah.
go line render, block, frame, insulate, plasterboard on the inside, and we've got a
Yeah.
really good high-performing wall assembly, which keeps
Yeah.
moisture out, but allows that vapor to pass through um,
Yeah.
that wall assembly. Um, I would
Yeah.
be interested to run like a Wookie analysis on that though. Sort of my passive house brain is sort of kicking in here, but I think I guess on the surface it all looks amazing. Tell me a little bit about how we're detailing that last block on the ground outside though. Is that a masonry block, or can that go into like a rebate in a slab or something like that?
It'll need to be 200 mil higher than the ground outside, essentially, just because any kind of natural material like that, you're going to have rain hitting the ground and splashing up, and it's just going to cause it's going to erode any natural material rather quickly. So yeah, the advice is to have it at least 200 millimeters off the ground. If that means having a bit of a solid core block around the outside, that it's sitting on, and then a bit of detailing, perhaps if that's insulated externally, so you can have some slab insulation, whether it's foam or something like that. But yeah, at least 200 millimeters off the ground.
So, and I think I probably already know the answer to this, but if there's anyone out there who obviously wants to get in touch with you about these blocks, your advice would be to get them involved during that design phase, so we can detail some of those
Yeah,
little things. Because I'm just thinking, if you are trying to, put these blocks on without that thought, I think that detail down the bottom could get a bit
yeah,
tricky. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I suppose my point is that people sometimes change their mind when they're going through the design process or when they started. Like sometimes people call me and they're like, "Oh, we're a portion of the way through, or we're almost ready to go, and we want hempcrete." I suppose my point is that it would be easier to change to hempcrete with this system, but obviously there's heaps of detailing that's my job basically, is to walk through the architects, help the engineers and help the builder prepare the best they can to get the best possible result. And that includes details like that, or even just the window heights so that it meets up with the hempcrete blocks, so that you're not having to cut blocks. Um, wall junctions if you're going blocks inside. All sorts of little different details, and your house is only as well performing as the worst part of it, really. In a sense, you'd know that. So
I do know
best to
that.
get
I do.
best to
So, you talk, and I know it's probably a bit like how long is a piece of string question, but like I do know that hempcrete itself, the in situ stuff is quite expensive, and then you've got to finish it externally and internally. You talk about 20 to 25% less. Are you talking about 20 to 25% less of
no,
that five hundred
yeah.
dollar cost, or the actual cost
No,
of?
it should be about 25% of the cost of hempcrete. So I still wouldn't be able to help all those people if it was 20% of the 20% less than hempcrete. So just talking really rough numbers. I don't know if people, it's really interesting for people. Obviously, people want to know that. Hempcrete, cast in place hempcrete probably is about $500 to $600 a square meter once you take into account, the even Airbnb and travel costs and everything like that. $500 to $600, and then on top of that, there's the lime render costs, which are sometimes there's an opportunity for people to charge a bit more than they should with lime rendering, because it's a bit of a it's
Niche.
a trade it's a niche trade. So $500 to $600 plus whatever the lime render costs. You're doing it on both sides with the hempcrete blocks. At the moment, the cost of the supply for blocks in Victoria to get them to you is around not $90 to $100 a square meter, and the bricklayer cost, it's quite cheap in the sense that we paid this bricklayer an hourly rate, and we did this house in Bruny Island in 4 days, 4 days with three people. One person was a skilled bricklayer, the other two people were just so around, if you maybe about $50 a square meter for the install. So about 150
So,
if you're doing an 80 mil block, one skin.
and again, total devil's advocate here. When we're comparing an in situ wall that's a circa 300 mil thick, and these blocks are only 80 mil thick, obviously your R value is going to change, but then
Yeah,
you need to then add on insulation and internal wall coverings.
yeah,
So we're still getting the advantage of it being an actual breathable product, which has got all the good things that hemp is. It's essentially carbon neutral, or it's quite low in embodied carbon. It's breathable. It's doing all those good things. It's completely recyclable or biodegradable at the end of its life.
yeah,
But you just need to then just factor in those other. If you are chasing those particular R values, you
yeah,
need to take all that into consideration.
yeah, 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 absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for coming along. I know we've got heaps of questions here that I'd love to get through, but I'm trying to keep these as short as possible.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
if there are anyone wants to get in contact with you, Will, they can get you at info@respirabuilt.com.au. Now I'm going to spell that. It's respirabuilt.com.au. Don't forget to jump onto our website, which is www.thesba.com.au. We actually have another webinar, previous webinar, which is on Hempcrete, to maybe fill in a few more gaps. And there's a bunch of other webinars and podcasts and stuff, and super valuable information on the website too. Will, thanks again for coming along today and telling us
Oh,
about Respirabuilt and Hempblock.
thanks for having me, and thanks for doing the podcast and getting me on there and putting it all together. And thanks for being an inspiration to the industry. I know there's heaps of people that watch what you do and look up for what you
Thanks,
do.
mate. It's
So
not
yeah,
just me.
thank you.
There are six other directors involved in SBA, mate. It's not just me, but thank you for the kind words anyway.
Cheers. Thanks a
All right.
lot, Amy.
Take care, man. Cheers, bud.
Cheers.
Good on you. Bye.